From Hong Kong, this is Mea Culpa, the Lessons Learned from Startups podcast, based upon the Postmortem Conference, where founders, investors, lawyers, and mentors share their stories about working on, with, or for startups. Today, we talk to Jean Su. Jean Su is a problem solver who's also into tech, gadget, fashion, food, tennis, startup, location-based apps, green biz, and way more. Just read his LinkedIn about that. Jean is also an active ecosystem partner or ecosystem builder from Hong Kong. Started out with, is one of the founders of Startups HK. He's also did his own startups and he's now working as a ecosystem builder for a big corporation in Hong Kong. Welcome, Jean.
Thanks, Jeff, for having me.
You're welcome. Jean, can you tell me, how did you end up in startups? Because I see that you're originally a firmware software engineer, right?
Yes. It's funny when I think about it because when I was a firmware engineer, I was actually working in Silicon Valley. This was back in 2003. And I was there as a firmware engineer working in SanDisk, the flash memory maker. And what I deal with was like every day I go to the lab and I program the chips on flash memory cards to essentially, improve the speed and efficiency of these cards, right? Everyone is chasing speed and also chasing space, right? And while I was there in Silicon Valley, what kind of companies were building up? Google, for example. Then there's Facebook. And I remember thinking to myself, why do I even need Facebook? I've got Friendster. And the thought of startup never ever entered my mind at all. I don't even know what it was. I was just all about tech, Silicon Valley is tech. And since I got myself there, I was like super happy and I was really enjoying the Bay Area. And life was great. So what actually ended up happening was in 2007. I was in business school at that time, doing my MBA, and the iPhone was invented, and subsequently the App Store. And when that came about, right, I thought, wow, I love tech, right? And I saw that the app space is very interesting, and I had some ideas that that I thought about. So I thought, wait, how do I even put this into reality? How do I do it? Then I realized, okay, there's this thing called startup, and where you actually figure out how to turn a solution that you have in mind that solves a problem into reality. And that is when I actually started to figure out how to actually do things. And that basically got me on this crazy journey for the past 11 years.
But as a firmware engineer, I don't know many firmware engineers that are going to do like business school, like an MBA. What made you decide to do an MBA?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question as well because so I was I started firmware engineering my first job in 2003, and then about 2 years into the job, I've always been thinking how do I actually go back to Hong Kong here, which is where my family is, right? At that time, I think even now it's challenging if you're in the R&D space, doing engineering work to find good jobs in Hong Kong. So I was and also at the same time, I was thinking maybe I could do other things, not just work in the lab. Maybe I'm actually better with people too. And I actually wanted to explore that skill, to do more things, on the business side of things, things, and basically interact more with people as opposed to just with computers.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did was I ended up going to Accenture. And how I actually found that was through a friend who plays squash with me, because he was a consultant. And then basically I asked him, hey, what do you do in your job? He said, oh yeah, we actually help our clients solve problems. And I thought, hey, that's pretty interesting. So that's what basically got me into management consulting.
Okay.
And I joined Accenture in 2005 in San Francisco, and then all the way until 2007. And I still haven't been able to achieve my original goal, which is to go back to Hong Kong. right? So, and I thought, okay, maybe I can do an MBA to brush up my finance skills and potentially take up a finance job in Hong Kong. And that's basically what I did. But unknowingly, like I did not go into the finance space, but I went into the startup space after B school because of the reasons that I mentioned before. The iPhone was invented, I came up with ideas, and I figured out, or I would say like I found startups, and that really attracted me, and that really, got me into this space.
Yeah, because what I know about you is that when you came to Hong Kong, founded Style nearby, right?
Yes.
What was it for you to say, "Hey, I have an idea here, and I want to pursue that"? What was a trigger for you for, and what was Style nearby? What were they doing?
hmm Yeah, so Style Nearby is actually an app similar to Pinterest, which allows you to pin interesting products related to design. And after you've pinned them, you can actually see where they are located around the city. So the idea is to drive exposure and help people discover interesting products around the city. And even when it's like, in upstairs in a building or in a small alley, in basically not the big malls that you see around where all the big brands are. So that is basically what Style Nearby is about.
But that's something that, let's put it that way. I run the Founder Institute here in Hong Kong, as you know, and every year we have a lot of people applying for that. And there's always somebody who wants to basically try to solve this space. You tried it
Yeah,
too.
I tried it too, and I failed miserably.
Uh, can you tell me what was your unique angle to this with Style Nearby, and what do you still see out there? Maybe even at that point, what didn't work for you, and how did you realize that it didn't work?
So, oftentimes I think uniqueness come from playing in a niche and also offering certain functionalities that is not applied to that niche. And my niche is about design products, and the functionality is that it actually has location tied to a photo and allow you to pin it. At that time, there wasn't like Instagram or things like that, or many things that allow you to remember where things are, that relates to how they look. So that was the niche, right? And I at that point, at least, that was the unique part. What was actually really challenging about playing in a niche is that your audience is very much limited. And also, I was thinking a lot on the lines of technology, where I was thinking like, oh, okay, how does the tech actually work? How do people actually use this tech? How do I make it more advanced so that the shops, the merchants do not have to do as much work, right? And how do I actually filter out or like, sort different items? But I never thought about the human side of it. Running an app, like this is actually like running a media. And when you have media, what people don't really want is like tons of data that doesn't like correlate. They want actually concise information that actually would help them make decision. That is why you see a lot of if you open any news app, right, they don't show you like millions of articles. They would show you like in a page probably like 10, 20 articles, right, which are all curated, all edited. And that is a function in my team that I didn't even have, right? And like I think that was a big gap that I did not realize like early on, or even like later stage when I kind of ran out of resources. So curation is really really important. Having good like editors for such a media app or website is really important. And I completely did not have that. Yeah, which is like a big thing.
When you started this out, you had an idea, of course, but did you have something in mind for yourself? Like, hey, these are my goals, these are my KPIs. I'm going to set that. And if I don't get to it, I will do something else. Or was it just, I'll start and I'll see where this ends?
Yeah, I did not. Yeah, you're right. I did not set very clear KPIs. I was trying to actually build it up and see, like, first if I actually could get paid customer, and I actually did. But that wasn't actually good enough. Getting one or two or three paid customer doesn't really. I mean, it means something, but it doesn't mean that you can get 100 paying customers, right? And then the other thing is, like, I at that time wasn't tracking retention, or like really like getting close to the users and keep asking them questions and getting feedback. I think that is a part that I definitely did not do enough of.
Didn't you read the Lean Startup Methodology book from Eric Ries?
Yeah, at that time I think it wasn't out yet.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. But yeah, yeah, there are some big mistakes I've made.
And did you had co-founders? Did you had a team? Like, how was the early stage founding of Gestel Nearby
Yeah,
look like?
very early stages, no co-founder. I outsourced the development to a local dev team out here.
Mhm.
And then, so that was what turned out to be, essentially the first version of the app. And then I realized that, it's not really working, going the outsource mode, because it costs quite a bit of money, right? And I got on board two co-founders later on. Both are in, they have tech backgrounds, and also one has tech and design. And like, so that basically we got to version 2 of the app, but still, I was still missing the very big thing, which is, I mentioned, the editorial part, right? And I still didn't have that, and I didn't even think about building it at that time. Not sure why, but
What were for you the signs that you now in hindsight say like, oh, those were the signs
mhm.
that I needed curation, but at that point you were probably like struggling with something that you now recognize as being signs that you needed curation. But what were those signs? What were for you, if you try to think back how you were thinking at that point without the knowledge that you have right now? Like, what kind of struggles did you had literally on a daily basis that you said like, hey, this is working? Like feedback from potential customers, or engagement was low, or how did you? How was it at that point in time for you that you, yeah, said this is a struggle?
Yeah, it is basically the lack of engagement. Actually, I was getting downloads, but I wasn't really getting people. I wasn't seeing people actually interacting much with the app. And like, yeah, I just didn't. And also, I felt that the problem wasn't actually painful enough for myself, so it was very hard to build this product. Yeah, we always say, like, we want to find a product that solves a problem that we also suffer
Hmm.
in. Whereas at that time, I don't feel that I suffered that much pain from the problem. So I guess, like, I was not as motivated enough to really try and solve it. I was trying to, like, say, oh, okay, how do I fix the problem? It's not how do I fix the engagement, or how do I actually do better?
Hmm.
But not really like, oh, how do I solve this problem such that I'm actually happier and I'm actually solving my own problem. That was actually a big revelation. Yeah.
Okay. And at one point, you start realizing this either is not going to work, or I have to pivot. Was there like one thing that you said that I could point to that particular moment that I start realizing this is working, or was it like a combination of items? Can you tell a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it was a combination. The thing about, like, startups team, we always say, is that the team needs oxygen to survive. And actually, what the oxygen is customer feedback, traction, and co-founders and people on your team, and even yourself. You want to see reaction, right, from people. Even if they hate it, it's good. That means, like, something is really wrong. But the worst kind of reaction is non-reaction, like people don't even care. And I think at a certain point, when I see that my team is kind of breaking up, in a sense that, people need to, well, they need to put a roof over their head, they need food, right? They need to get paid. people can sweat equity, but you can't sweat equity forever. So like, people will start doing other things if your thing is not working. And I see that, right? So people get distracted. The product slows down in terms of iteration. So that's basically what ended up happening.
Am I correct to, at that point, understand that this was a self-funded bootstrap slash non-external investor venture?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did you, because it's also quite often, like, as you know, a quite often asked question is, how did you find after you said the initial outsourcing of the app, how did you find technical people to be willing to work with you on this on sweat equity basis? What were your skills? Because quite often a lot of people are struggling with that aspect.
Yeah, I was actually very grateful for Joseph Cheng and also actually another guy called Jackie Chan to come on board to be my co-founders. Um, yeah, they believed in me and they believed in the idea, and actually they went behind me and helped me deliver the second phase of the app. And yeah, I how did I do it? I really just pitched them on the idea. And of course, I showed them the initial app that I did and the traction that I've received. And yeah, they bought in.
How were you able to pitch them? Because quite often it's also the question is like, hey, where do I find people like Jackie and those technical people,
Joseph,
Joseph?
yeah.
Where did you find them? Corner on the street and networking?
Um, yeah. So I actually don't remember, but of course, Startups HK, right? When I was actually building up Style Nearby, I realized how Hong Kong startup ecosystem was essentially non-existent, right? There's no ecosystem. So I met some the co-founders of Startups HK via Twitter, right? That's how I met Casey, Casey Lau,
Hmm.
and then he introduced me to Jonathan Buford, and then we essentially were a bunch of founders, right? And we started to build a community, and actually through the community, I got to meet a lot more other people, and that's how I ended up finding like Jackie and also Joseph.
As a co-founder of Startup HK, now started GBA, the Greater Bay Area, mainland China, Hong Kong, Macau. You started out, I think, around like 10 years ago, right?
Yep.
Did first Startup Saturday or something like that?
Yes, that's right. That was our first event.
Can you tell me a little bit about the challenges of building an ecosystem or trying to build an ecosystem here in Hong Kong with just a bunch of enthusiasts in the startup space? Yeah, very business, financial oriented city like Hong Kong.
Yeah, you know what? I think at that time we didn't really think of it as like a challenge because the whole idea was to meet other founders and also figure out how we could help each other. So we never thought about is it going to be a challenge trying to do something like gathering people in startups in Hong Kong. I mean, we know they are there, and we just want to gather people. We don't really care about how many people we actually gather or how big the group actually gets. But of course, as the startup ecosystem grow, we do notice that there are hurdles for startups to scale. Out of Hong Kong, there are many problems that founders encounter, and some of these problems may originate from certain policies, the way things are in the city, and yeah. But I would say that given we are where we are, we at that time initially, we were really just trying to gather people that are working on startups, that are building startups, and we focus on helping people solve their problems. That was basically what got us started. Yeah.
Any learnings from that, like maybe even organizing events that went wrong or sponsors that were coming on that later on had alternative motives or something else like that?
Yeah, actually, for sure. I mean, I guess the challenge as like an ecosystem builder that is actually, giving a lot of time, to really, bring people together. If this effort, right, is not sustained in a way like, where we actually get more resource, we could hire more people. As the community grows, it weighs down a lot on the few people that are actually building it up, because we're giving a lot of the time and effort to do it. But if we don't actually find other ways to pull in resources, at a certain point in time, the amount of effort that we try to put in to build this ecosystem will kind of run out of steam because it's tiring. Yeah. And like
I know that.
this is actually where I guess, as I mentioned, right, there is oxygen coming into the team, being like, people enjoy the ecosystem, people actually found that it actually helped them learn many things. But you need to figure out a way to capture what people were willing to give back, right, such that the community would be sustained. And one of the ways to do that is to turn it into a business, right? By thinking more in the business mindset, really like, thinking about pulling in revenue, having expenses, paying for people to work for us, lightening our load, keeping everybody's like commitment, or more like, their time to something that is like sustainable, I would say, is quite critical. And I think that this is a big learning for sure. I think that we always talk about give and take. You can always give and people will always take, but are you able to take, right, at a certain point in time? Because like if you just keep giving, it's not going to be healthy because you will actually run out of steam. Because at the end of the day, you also need to put a roof over your head and also eat, right? And there's only 24 hours per day,
Hmm.
right? So I think that is something that is very important.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, after Style Nearby, you started out as the general manager for CityMapper in Hong Kong. For people who don't know what CityMapper is, can you give a little bit of an introduction of CityMapper and your task were to roll out CityMapper in Hong Kong?
Sure. CityMapper is the ultimate transport app. It is an app that would actually tell you how to get from A to B in a city, utilizing all the different transport modes in the city, be it a train, a bus, ferry. In Hong Kong's case, green minibus or even the red ones. Combining any of these to help you get to your destination and showing you all the different options that you can actually combine them in at any given time of day and any given location. So it is an app actually that covers multiple cities. Currently, it covers around 40 over cities around the world. And it is a startup that was founded in 2011 out of London. And I helped to launch the app into Hong Kong in 2015. And there's the story around CityMapper is actually, my story around it is quite interesting. And I think that a lot of other founders could take some cues in doing this. Is that I actually didn't seek a role at CityMapper. And what I actually did was voted for the app to cover Hong Kong. So when I didn't see it covering Hong Kong. So basically what happened was that in 2015, around May, I was actually in New York and I was like looking for an Italian restaurant to go to using my favorite app, Foursquare. And like when I clicked directions to like this Italian restaurant, the mapping menu popped up with three options: Google Maps, Apple Maps, and CityMapper. I'm like, CityMapper, what is this? Right. So I clicked that, and I actually had the app installed for some reason, but I've never opened it before. And what was presented to me blew me away. Basically, there was all the options available in New York City that I could take to go to this Italian restaurant. But what's more even impressive is that it has all the real-time information of like when the bus is actually going to arrive at the stop, how I can actually walk to the bus stop, what bus do I take. Suddenly, basically, I became a guru. Like normally, I always relied on the subway, never take the bus, right? But this app changed everything. And that was when I started looking more into the app, and I see this page, this list of cities, and I don't see Hong Kong. I see Singapore there, but I don't see Hong Kong. I'm like, what? This has to be in Hong Kong. And then there was this button on the top right hand corner that says next city question mark. So obviously I clicked that. So it was a Google form. And the first question was, hey, what city do you want us to cover in and why? Well, I wrote why, Hong Kong's fantastic city with like great public transportation. You need to be here. We are full of apps that only covers single mode. It doesn't connect different modes.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the bottom part, there was an optional section. And it says like, hey, do you want to get early access and bonus materials? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm always up for early access to, startups, right? So I actually saw that section and I said, oh, it basically asked me for my bio and how can I help. So I say, oh, I run this Startups HK and I could actually introduce you to different people in Hong Kong, blah, blah, blah. And then 2 weeks later, the general manager, in the headquarters, gave me a call and said like, hey, Gene, and during the call, he said, asked me a lot of questions about Hong Kong, the transport system there, and then also say like, hey, by the way, what are you doing now? And I said like, not much. I'm running this startup ecosystem and also helping my wife on a fashion business. And then he said like, would you be open to a consulting role to help us on, Hong Kong? And so I said, yeah, let's explore. And basically 4 weeks after that, they flew me out to London to work with the team, right? And it was really amazing. And yeah, and I was actually the first person they did that to, like like a general manager level type of person, um, that they actually flew in from another city to work with the team. And 3 months after that, Hong Kong was launched in launch officially, and actually at that time I turned from being a consultant into a general manager. Yeah.
Again, I can understand. I've been living in Hong Kong now for almost 10 years. Everything before that was very, like what you said, a lot of separate apps. Every transport organization had their own apps. How hard was it to get those people to open up their schedules, open up their real-time locations, open up their basically their services through an API and start working together with you on Citymapper? Because I can understand that might be not the easiest task to do, especially in Hong Kong.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, it was impossible to get real-time data at that time, and because it was all not available essentially. And so what we actually focused on was at least get the static data, meaning like the non-real-time data such as the routes, the stops, locations, the operating hours, which is very important, right? You want to know when you could actually take something. So we, and actually, the interesting thing is that for Hong Kong, even the static data is not good. And
I still remember having to download PDFs just to see when a bus would depart from a
yes,
nearby bus stop.
yeah, exactly. So there is no machine readable data in Hong Kong for many different transport operators. So that's why actually it took 3 months to launch Hong Kong. It's because like me, actually I was doing a lot of that manual entry, of schedules and even the routes. I was plotting the routes of buses, like mini buses, right? Because actually for mini buses is even more undefined. The data that we saw from the government, they had the start and the end point. That's the two data points we have for each minibus route. Can you believe that? So try to build a transport app with just the start and end point of a route, and basically you are supposed to help people figure out how to get on this bus in between. Yeah, so it was crazy, but I have to say, you know, when the data is bad, you need more tech, right? And and you need more resources to solve that. And and that's why when the city does not help the startup need to do more work to be able to generate the same result as another startup in a city that has done more of the groundwork for the startup, right? So what happens is that a lot of times why City Mapper would succeed in London, like by being founded in London as versus Hong Kong, is because like London has the best like open data at that time, right, back in 2011, out of many cities in the world. So the startup, if they are able to utilize the data to actually produce a solution that really could solve the problem and build traction, that's where they can use to get more resources because investors would be interested, people would believe in what they're actually doing to go get behind the startup. But if it's a startup coming from Hong Kong, right, founded in Hong Kong, trying to do the same thing, it'll be almost impossible because the city is not really helping itself. And this is why, the open data movement is really, really important. And cities need to be able to help themselves so that the startup can help them.
So how were you able to get, for instance, at that point, if that open data is not there, and of course you're trying to move that and trying to have people open that, but before that you have a service to run. So what did you do? Take every minibus with a GPS in hand and track it in that way, or what were your tips and tricks and hacks to get it work?
So actually, you mentioned some of these hacks. You mentioned these PDF that you need to read, right? Basically, the hack is to use a human eye to interpret the PDF
Hmm.
and then like type it back into the computer, right? And
That's the most basic hack.
that's the basic hack. And then so I talked about how the minibus data is only the start and the end point. So in Hong Kong, there are like some very enthusiastic, people. They just spend their time, just for not for no reason, really. Like maybe it's their interest or passion, and they would actually map out every single minibus route along with the information. This site is actually called 16seats.org. And I talked to the founder there, and he actually allowed us to use his information that he has collected through years, right, to put into our app, and we turn all his routes into the minibus routes in the app so that we could help even more people.
I can understand when you got that okay, you popped up a little beer or maybe even something stronger to say like, yes, we got this, because for me, as I see that from the outside, that's a huge valuable data.
So the thing is that data was actually available publicly. It's just that we were trying to make sure that the founder was actually okay with it, and he was very nicely was, and yeah, definitely we were very happy. I bought him coffee or something, and yeah, but the work to actually turn that into something the computer that would actually read. So when that took 2 months just for the red minibus, right? And man, when that was done, I was like, I guess I just crashed in bed.
I can I can understand that indeed. Yes. Okay. And then, of course, at one point everything moves smoothly. As I understand now that you're now helping to build a ecosystem for the local MTR, the local metro system. How is that going, and how did you came about doing that?
Yeah, so I guess I started working with MTL, well, since Citymapper days. So in Citymapper, we did a partnership with MTL where they actually share with us the real-time train status information with Citymapper. So what this means is that in the Citymapper app, you'll be able to see what is the train status of all the metro lines in Hong Kong. So what can that do then? It means that if any of the lines has a problem or a disruption, the app would know it and also help people to avoid it and also take find the alternatives. For example, you were trying to get from like Central to Causeway Bay. Normally, the number one choice is MTR. But if something is wrong, it will not say that is the number one choice. It would show you other options, right? And that is the main reason why there was this partnership with MTR. And so I started working with MTR at that time, and then earlier this year, actually about 3 months ago, I actually joined them as the head of ecosystem. And what this actually means is that my role, I'm in the global innovation department of MTR, and the department is in charge of driving innovation in this large organization. There are different ways to do it, mainly two. One is to help MTR connect with the innovation ecosystem, right? By we can partner with startups, we could actually work with them on, utilizing their products and services, and also potentially even come up with new services together. The other way is that we could actually build our own new solutions by working more like a startup. So this is what global innovation department does, and I am in this department, and I guess by having the experience in working with some team members in MTR during my City Mapper days, and the fact that I've been working on a multimodal transport app for the past 5 years, helped me land this role in MTR. And it is really exciting because I think given the challenge in the world today, in a very different world right now we live in, and the way that innovation is actually speeding up, organizations like MTR would need to find new ways to do things. It's not just like it was back in the 70s or like the pre-internet world, where if you are a transport operator, you just make sure that you have your trains on time, running safely, and also as a property management company, managing the development of new stations, new residential areas, new commercial areas, how we can actually do more using technology is going to introduce a lot of new dynamics into how a service provider like MTR is actually able to do business.
Because MTR is not only, of course, indeed the metros, and it's also not only Hong Kong, right? They have way more than only the actual metro in Hong Kong.
Yes. So that's why our department is the Global Innovation Department. We actually are focused on MTR's global business. And currently, MTR has presence in China, Hong Kong, Australia, UK, Sweden, and even Macau, right? So oftentimes, we would operate different rails in these other cities or countries, and and every single geography is different, and also the tech is different, right? So it's important to be able to figure out the ecosystems in this area, and um, the way that people actually use technology in these different areas.
Okay. Sounds a very exciting and impactful situation you're in right now. Just in general, what do you see in the next 3 to 5 years in innovation going to happen in the Greater Bay Area?
Yeah, so the Greater Bay Area is actually very, very interesting because it is the only place in the world where the what I call the two internet meets, the China internet and the rest of the world internet. And and also because of this, right, there's very interesting dynamics that could actually happen in the Greater Bay Area as these two essentially internets crisscross. There's a lot of things that could be learned between these two systems and areas, and there's also a lot of advantages to be captured from both sides. But of course, given the clash between U.S. and China right now, it does make things challenging. But at the same time, I think from Hong Kong's perspective, we actually would want to really tap into how we can actually work better with the different counterparts in the Greater Bay Area and be able to leverage each other's strengths to scale our businesses and solutions such that we can actually do more and help the world go forward.
That's a great way. What's the most valuable advice that's ever given to you?
Mm,
Something that you really still remember, somebody, a former boss or a colleague or a mentor at one point said to you, and that still resonates with you even today, and you say like, yeah, that was a very valuable advice, and I still live by that almost every single day.
yeah, I would think that, it's yeah, I think the one that really resonated with me was one from my professor, Adam Dell. Actually, he's Michael Dell's brother, and back in business school, and he actually told me that it's important to keep learning when you actually are working, and if you're working for someone, make sure that you're learning every single day. And when you're not, like if you're just going through the day and then at the end of the month collecting the paycheck, then then there's not much point. You need to start figuring out, how do you actually learn more. And another important thing is that you want to learn using other people's money if you can, right? Instead of like you paying and then getting to learn something. So, and there are actually that's why actually people say like, hey, if you go to an accelerator, people are paying you to learn, as opposed like if you go to business school, you're paying to learn, right, yourself. So I think in today's world, there are actually many ways to actually learn something using other people's money. And but of course, when you do that, you want to make sure that you're contributing, right? And I think that is something that is really important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there one thing that you want people to take away from this talk? What would that be? Something that you really want to drive home?
Yeah, I would say it's really important to do things that you find motivating and you think it's meaningful to yourself. And yeah, because only then you actually will really enjoy doing what you do every day. And I think it's very important to do that. But of course, I think everyone has responsibilities or let's say a family to take care of. I'll say that it's also very, very important to keep that in mind. And like as entrepreneurs, sometimes we tend to go all in into everything, but you also need to think about the people that are with you and also make sure that you take care of them as well.
Family is indeed very important, and the people around you are also very important. I want to thank you for your valuable insights and sharing of your lessons learned in startups.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for the time.
For the listeners, although the rating system on podcast is hideous, if you like a Mea Culpa series, then rate this podcast with 5 stars as motivation for the makers. Thanks to Mizuho Crowdbrain in Hong Kong for being the venue sponsor of this episode, and thank you for Copy Ventures for making this series possible. This is Jeffrey Brewer. Go out and build something meaningful.